Avaya has changed my life.
Avaya has made me the woman I am today.
Avaya is my home.
Avaya is personal freedom.
Avaya is the reason my life continuously improves.
Let everyone in your life know about Avaya.
Everyone needs to know about this amazing company.
Thank you, Avaya, for appearing in my inbox.
What Ike Allen and Andy Anderson have created at Avaya is what the world needs.
Welcome to Avaya University. Thank you so much for joining us. Our fellow teacher, Jeffrey Geigneck, is with us today to talk about the little-known beach effect that gives you the power to change your brain state on command. Jeffrey started his journey at an incredibly young age as one of the youngest people ever to be certified as a practitioner of neuro-linguistic programming at the age of 15. He studied psychology at the University of Windsor before becoming a clinical hypnotherapist, a licensed master practitioner of NLP, and a world-renowned expert in brainwave stimulation and entrainment. Jeffrey is a best-selling published author, speaker, and coach, as well as one of today's most prolific content creators in personal development. Welcome back, Jeffrey.
Hi, yeah, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, we love having you. For those of our people who have not perhaps seen one of our previous interviews, will you please talk about what happened that led you to become a licensed practitioner of neuro-linguistic programming at such a young age?
Yeah, well, it's an interesting story. I mean, I feel like I was born into it and driven that way because when it was really early, I was diagnosed with ADD, developmental delays, and learning disabilities, and I had tons of problems. It became really apparent pretty early. The good news on that is both my parents were psychologists and they both worked for the school boards, which, I was going into school with. And so they worked with the schools and the teachers and things to set up these special situations where I could perhaps, show that I was learning, that I was absorbing things, but I couldn't take tests normally.
Yeah.
I was pulled out of class at a regular basis to go to speech therapy all the way up until grade 6. I mean, I couldn't, I think even in grade 6, my reading level was like grade 1. It was just, everything was really bad. But my parents and their influence, not to say that this was a good thing to do, but they were convinced, I guess, that if they could keep me moving forward one grade to the next, that hopefully my brain would just sort itself out. And, I understand why they did that because there is research that shows that. And sometimes that happens. Sometimes all of this stuff is just developmental delays and then it kicks in, right? Mm-hmm. Well, that didn't happen for me and the way that everybody had hoped. And so what they did is they ended up taking me to get a comprehensive neuropsych. I mean, that young boy, prodded, my first experience with EEGs on the head, and they were like, try to read this, and everything, every functional skill that they could probably test, they were given to me to do, and they were writing down and keeping track of the results. And at the end of it, they went over and I called my parents over and they said, look, the results as we see it is that all the individual areas of Jeff's brain are working exactly as they should. Matter of fact, from what we can see is the creative side is just, off the charts. The problem as we see it, though, is that there's communication gaps. The areas are not communicating as they should. Yeah. And they said, as long as that is the case, he will always behave like he's learning disabled, like he's delayed or he's got all these problems. And I'll never forget this. My dad, a little bit of a joker, right? But I mean, he was like, so let me get this straight. You're telling us this is a communication problem. And, and the doctor went, well, yeah. And so he looked at my mom and he said, well, we're psychologists. We should be able to figure this out, right? His approach, God bless, right? Their approach was so positive, and I'll never forget that. And I think it gave me hope and me encouragement to work. And now in the 70s, early 70s, dating myself a bit here, neuroscience, not what it is today. There was very little known, but luckily my dad was at the forefront. He was studying a lot of it. And they devised all these things for me to do, right? That, everything from, changing the way I would hold the bat during playtime, to swapping my knife and fork, to, anything that they could figure out to do to encourage what would be cross hemispheric communication, right? To get the signals to, communicate and get all these regions of the brain to line up. And so this went on for years and years and years, and there seemed to be very little, if any, improvement. Then suddenly it just turned on. I remember this like it was yesterday. My dad was trying to get me to spell this word together, and he was trying to help me break it apart into 3 words, to get her. And I was so angry at him. I was so frustrated. Well, but that's not 3 words, it's 1 word. And it was just, I was so tired. I was so tired of all of this and losing hope at that point. But what was really interesting is I went to bed angry and frustrated and had these crazy dreams. And the next day I got it. I was like, not only could I say the word, I could spell the word, and then very quickly thereafter, it's like somebody just flicked a light on, right? It was just that everything started to connect. Within the summer that passed, I was up to grade level in reading, and within 1 year, I was way above. I went in, I no longer needed speech therapy. I no longer needed to take tests differently. I mean, it was like a little inner genius that was inside. Somebody just, and away I went. But I did know this. I did know that, and this was really important, is that, it was the work that my parents did with me, all the experiment, all the time after school, all that stuff, that really helped me to have a life that could have been radically different, right? I mean, had I not had the parents that I had, things could have been very, very different. And I knew that. And even though they weren't 100% sure of what they did and why it worked per se, I was certain at this young age that it was the work they did that gave me, opened up things for me. And I, from a very young age, decided that I was going to help and dedicate myself to people that struggle. I was going to learn everything about the brain. I knew it was the work with the brain that really helped me. And so I dove in. And now I a little while after, I heard weird sounds coming from my parents' room. Door was closed, and I'm like, what the heck is that? And young kid, right? 13 years old, I crack open the door. I walk in on him. Not a dirty story, by the way. Walk in on him, and there's my mom. She's like half, passed out, drooling on herself. And my dad is talking to her in a really weird way. And he turns to me, he's like, shh, right? Because he sees me come in. And he's doing hypnosis with her for pain control. My mom had some health problems and some issues. And so he's doing all this hypnosis. And I never left for a second. I stayed for the whole thing. And later he came up to me and he said, do you know what was going on here? Do you know, this was hypnosis and all this. And he started to explain it to me. Now, understand, by then, my brain is in high gear. I'm already kicking. I'm already excelling. And he said, you want to learn? I said, okay, right? And so he started teaching me, and he noticed that I had a proficiency for it. So, in Canada, where I grew up, you can't take clinical hypnotherapy courses unless there's a medical doctor, a dentist, a psychologist. Like there's all these, it's different now. It's a little bit more open now, but there was all these rules. And so what he and my mom did research, and they found neuro-linguistic programming. And that's how I got into it. They found a place to take me and where I could go on the weekends and do these, 30-day type of intensive. And that's how it all began, and I've never looked back ever since. I mean, it's just been always upward and onward since then.
Beautiful. Well, bless your parents for their dedication, and bless you for your interest and for your own dedication in researching all of this and bringing it to more and more people. It's an amazing story.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So tell us, what is the beach effect?
This is one of my favorite things in the world. And so the beach effect, and I talked about this on my TEDx presentation, is the beach effect is this, the way I call it, is that, if we were to take you or anybody somewhere warm, nice on an ocean beach, and you were just sort of to listen and tune into those waves, the rate and speed of the waves coming in and out of shore, very steady frequency, right? After a certain time, what scientists have noticed is that aspects of the brain, the electrical functioning in the brain, right, start to sync up with that rate and speed of the waves coming in and out. It's part of what makes it so relaxing. That's the beach effect. And if after a certain amount of time, if for whatever reason, the speed of that tide would change, whether it be slow down or speed up, the person who's entrained, we call that entrainment, to that, their brain frequencies would either go up or go down. They would sync and match up that what it is entrained to, in that case, the beach, the waves. Now, why is that something that's interesting? Well, we've been studying brain waves for well over 100 years, believe it or not. We have roughly 120 years of EEG research where we have monitored brain functions, and we've discovered a lot of cool things. Is that we know specifically what the brain looks like in terms of the way electricity is moving in the brain when somebody's very happy. We know what it looks like when they're sad. We know what a brain firing on all cylinders in that genius state where the creativity and productivity is flowing. We know what that looks like. We know all these different states. We know what trauma looks like. We know what, all these really bad things we don't look like. Right. And what we've discovered is that the brain rhythms from one person to the next in regards to these emotional states or these really optimal high functioning states are remarkably similar from one person to the next. Now, there is a lot of individual things that come into play. I mean, we're all different in so many ways, but we really do have the same basic wiring and anatomy. And it's the reason why, you can go in for an appendicitis and they're not guessing, right? They know exactly where to look, right? And some of these doctors could probably do it with their eyes closed, right? Just because we know where the heart is, we know where the lung is, we know all this stuff. We have the same anatomy, and it's the same way with the brain. And the energy and the electricity flow. We know when it looks a certain way. Somebody's stressed or somebody's struggling or somebody is happy or somebody is sad. We know it, right? And it's by using that, the combination of the beach effect, this whole idea that the brain will entrain, it'll sync up and follow frequencies that are similar to its own, right? So it won't sync up and follow frequencies that are way outside of its range. It will not do that, right? Frequencies that are very unhealthy or just outside of its normal range of function, it won't do that. But it will sync up and follow outside frequencies that are similar to its own within its normal range. And because we know that, we can produce, now it doesn't happen instantly, there's a special science to get this to happen. But we do know we can get it to happen. There's ways to do that. And by doing that, we can have somebody listen to an audio or a video with audio or a variety of different things. Even tapping can do it to some degree, right? And the brain will sync up, and then we can move that brainwave functions, that functioning to something more desirable. So if somebody is dealing with trauma or they're triggered, we can use that beach effect to move them out of that state, right? And so it's not an instant cure for trauma by no means. However, the one thing that I always remind people when we're dealing with anything that we want to change is that there is a really big aspect or part of the brain. Well, it's not big, but it has a big role.
Right.
And its role is to automate anything we do again and again and again. So the more times a person takes steps to calm themselves while being triggered, the more easier it is for them to do on their own. And the more that can happen naturally and automatically on their own. And so using certain entrainment types of technology can be incredibly valuable to helping people really learn how to change their brain state on command. So when they're triggered, they can use it so that the trigger no longer happens anymore. Or, when creativity is low, you can use the same effect in your life to make sure you ramp up your creativity, because we know what that looks like too. So really the possibilities are endless with it.
I love it. That's so amazing. And I love that it's called the beach effect, because it really kind of encapsulates that, that quality of plasticity, because you think of not only the waves coming in, but the fact that they are moving and restructuring the particles of sand on the beach. And it's gorgeous. I love it. And I love that it's something that we can tap into.
But you just gave me a whole new metaphor.
Yay.
Restructure, but that's it. And I'm going to thank you. I'm going to credit you for that, because it really is true. Because I'll get a little technical for a second here. Pardon me, if you allow me. The prefrontal cortex is sort of a top-down signaling system, which goes and retrieves information from long-term memory. And how that happens and the way that it happens is what gives us our executive functioning. So, our 7 primary executive functions are, thinking, planning, self-monitoring, self-control, time management, organization, all that stuff, right? And one of the things that we know is that people that have experienced a significant amount of trauma, working memory is another one, right? They will have usually some deficiencies, some normal deficiencies in one or multiple areas of executive functioning. Then when they're triggered, right, they lose multiple, and then the deficits go way up in terms of how that executive functioning. If you've seen somebody with post-traumatic stress disorder coming back from war, they're hiding under tables, they're doing, and I've worked with several people, it's heartbreaking. It's because that whole top-down signaling that's going to get information from the brain is just completely shut down. It's not working. And even under normal conditions, 1 or 2 of those areas are not structured properly, right, in the beginning. And so using the beach effect, meditation, all these things that we know, those restructure those connections. So this is where your metaphor comes in, right? How the waves literally restructure the sand. Well, it's the same idea. When somebody goes and uses the beach effect, whether it's through meditation or whether it's through technology or self-assisted guided meditations, which is what I produce a lot, the brain waves change, and that does in fact restructure the connections. The research shows that it strengthens those connections and rewires it so those executive functioning, that top-down signaling happens in such a way where we have that self-control, we have that self-monitoring, we have all of those things return.
Beautiful. So now that we kind of know the mechanism behind it, how can we use it to really kind of become our own therapist? Like what can we do knowing that there's this plasticity to kind of guide our minds to sort of, build up from these deficits?
Well, there's two steps for me. And always going back to that part of the brain that just likes to automate everything, right? It doesn't make a judgment call if this is good for you or bad for you. That's not its job. Its job is, it says, you've done this 10 times, let's make it automatic. I used to work in the gaming industry years and years ago. I was putting myself through university, and it was the most stressful job in the world, and people were crazy, and by 2 o'clock every day, my brain functioning would be like darn near zero. After quitting and leaving, I noticed that about 2 o'clock every day, I was good for nothing. It was like I lost 20 IQ points, as soon as as soon as it hit 2 o'clock, 20 IQ points out the window, and I need every one I got, so, but that's an example of the automation that I'm talking about. And then once I realized, I was like, okay, right, what we're going to do is we're going to use this plasticity thing, and I'm going to change the way that I feel and that my brain works by doing meditation, by doing some physical activity right at that juncture, at that time. And so one of the things that I did is I would jump up and use my body and explode my breath out. I would do all these different things to change the way my brain was functioning. And then sooner, it was sooner rather than later, my brain said, oh, okay, I get it. We're no longer doing the dumb at 2 thing. Right? We're doing this now, right? And so it's really just that simple. Now, what you choose to do to help that out is really up to you. So there's two things. There's this just general strengthening, which means you go and do something, use something, a tool, a technique, a meditation, or some maybe the technology that I make that makes it pretty easy and pretty quick, is that you decide that you're going to put yourself on the calendar and you're going to say, this time I'm just going to do this exercise, come hell or high water. The reason why I say put yourself on the calendar is that, as a hypnotherapist, I like to leverage self-hypnosis whenever possible, right? we never put ourselves on the calendar, or very rarely do we put ourselves on the calendar, right? We get to self-help, self-care, self-love when we get a chance. There's an opening in the door, and we go, maybe we'll do this. Maybe I'll do a little personal development. Or if we're in crisis, right? Otherwise, we're not really putting ourselves on the calendar. And so that sends a message, right? Where everything else in life is more important than you. That's an unconscious message, believe it or not, and it's a major one. So you start putting yourself on the calendar and say, at 3 o'clock, I'm going to go in, I'm going to do some beach effect stuff where I strengthen the capacity of my mind to be calm. So that's top-down signaling works and my self-control returns and all of this stuff happens. And then that's stage one. You start with once or twice a week, and it doesn't have to be a long time. Start off with 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. Work your way up, but show up to the appointment, do the work. You will strengthen those connections, but you will also send a really powerful signal to your subconscious, your unconscious minds. You have more than one.
Yes.
That you are very important and that you love yourself. And so we take care of a few issues just with that one action of putting yourself on the calendar. The other thing is that you prepare yourself to take some action when triggered, or when something shows up that makes it so you got to peel yourself off the roof, right?
Right.
And everybody goes through it. People that are suffering from trauma will go through it through it a little more often sometimes, depending on others. And so you set yourself up. You have if you're using passive brain fitness technology, for instance, which is what I've created, you make sure you got some on your mobile devices. You make sure you have some of these releases that can help guide you into a meditative state, or a creative state, or a productive state, or a happy state, or whatever it is, right? Anything but, right? The trigger.
Right.
And so it does, to me, as long as you're exercising the connections for one of your executive functions, you're good, right? So choose whatever you want, do that, and that will help. And that starts to send a signal to that automated part of the brain that says, oh, wait a second, this trigger is no longer ruling my life. Now, does it happen instantly? No, it doesn't. I've worked with a lot of people with a lot of trauma, severe trauma. The worst is, delayed onset, child repressed trauma that just comes up 50 years later.
Yeah.
That takes a little more diligent, a little more work. Now, I do see some amazing things happen. They do happen. They can happen very quickly, but you got to apply yourself. You got to do the work, right? And, the closer you can treat a trauma with that, with anything, from the time that it happens, the better off you will be. Right? The more you wait, it gets a little bit sticky, but it can be done. And I've seen absolute miracles happen in this area. But you make a plan. You say, I'm going to strengthen these areas when everything is just fine. And when things are nuts, I am going to do everything in my power to force myself to help change lanes. And right, so that part that automated all this crap in the first place, we'll get the picture. Now, people say, well, the reason why trauma gets automated very fast is because the intensity, the emotion. We're always dealing with safety, security, or loss, right? Those are I've never had any other trauma that hadn't had to do with one of those things, right? And at least at some level. And when those are threatened at the extreme level, that triggers basically the oldest part of our brain, and that part of the automation in our brain, that's part of that. And so something can be learned. Fear can be learned instantaneously, and that's why, but to unlearn it, to get that part of the brain to let go of it and choose something different, you gotta have at it for a while, and you have a plan. And the one I just described to you will do the trick if you apply yourself.
Beautiful. I love it. And so, okay. So specifically for trauma, how can it help us break free from trauma? So I understand that treating it as quickly as possible is important, and I would suppose that one of the reasons for this, to try and treat it as closely to the point of trauma as possible, is because that kind of keeps us from having to work through these subsequent layers of meaning that begin to pile up on that. So can we go into it a little bit further for that?
Yeah, well, you're absolutely right. So what happens is that once a trigger fires, right, X happens, anxiety kicks in, right? That signal is established. And if it happens once a day, right, you think 2 or 3 years go by, well, guess what? That becomes a layer, that becomes a solid connection where the neural pathways are, it's not a dirt road anymore, it's an 8-lane superhighway, except for it's going to a place you don't want to go, right? And that's why, is because every time that trigger fires and successfully triggers that or brings about that unwanted feeling, right, that process gets more ingrained. Right? It gets like those record grooves, like skis on a ski slope, right? Those neural pathways. I mean, it's tunneling, right? It's a well-established freeway, right? In terms of the energy in the brain, and that's why it is important. And this is where the automation gets stronger and stronger and stronger, right? And so, yeah, treating it as fast as possible is always a great idea. Not always possible. I mean, I run into people that, you know, they don't even know they had trauma, and all of a sudden in their 40s, you know, they're seeing flashes of these horrible things when they were kids, and that's delayed onset childhood repressed trauma. Man, it's not fun, right? But a lot of people have it. But there's hope. You can absolutely retrain that out. You just have to have a plan, commit yourself, and you can do it.
Awesome. So, in that vein, you mentioned the passive brain fitness technology. So how is passive brain fitness technology different from other types of frequency-based products?
Well, one of the things I did a long time ago is, you probably guess, I'm always self-educating, and, you know, and that includes taking university courses and stuff. I'm no longer trying to get degrees or anything else like that. But, you know, I find an expert somewhere that says that is really impressive, and I go find out what they got to say. Well, years ago, so brainwave entrainment, let me start here. Brainwave entrainment, brainwave stimulation, frequency-based science typically fall into either auditory, right? We're creating sounds, right? That the brain can do that whole Bfftjg effect thing, sync up to, and then the sounds get moved, and then we move the functioning of the brain, right? Or visuals, where they're typically just flashing lights. You may have seen these. These are the goggles, dark glasses, and then, right? Combining auditory and visual is guaranteed proven more effective. Bottom line, clinically proven. Visual without audio is still more effective than just audio alone. You know, and it's actually the same reason. If you're sitting on a rock on the beach, seeing the waves come in and out and hearing them is more effective than if you're just listening, right? It's just that you're getting more sensory input, and therefore the cortical evoked response in this brain is stronger. Well, I went to this lecture on this person, a renowned expert on auditory processing and visual processing. And I had one of the biggest aha moments of my life. I was like, oh, you know, all this stuff that we've been doing in this for brainwave entrainment, brainwave stimulation is all wrong. Well, it's not all wrong. It's tragically underpowered because we're not using like the full potential of it. Now, I'll give you an example. Flashing lights don't have a lot of inherent meaning, right? So the brain doesn't particularly get very excited about it. Right? It's not something that it goes, oh, great. I mean, if it's a flashing light of a police officer behind you chasing you, okay, maybe maybe that's meaning, right? All of a sudden, but you see what I mean? Your brain gets excited about that.
Yes.
Okay. So, but flashing lights, not a lot of inherent meaning. So as I was listening to this woman talk, she was talking about how the visual cortex of the brain really likes to pay attention to, pardon me, geometry, symbols, depth perception, movement, all this stuff. And the way she made it clear was just this. She went, think about it, right? If your brain wasn't always overly excited to process that visual information, driving would be the most dangerous activity in the world. I mean, it already is, but nobody would do it. You wouldn't be able to walk around your house without bumping into stuff, like all the time, you know? And because that's what the visual part of the brain looks like. So what I decided to do is take visual stimulation that used to be just these flashing lights on and off, and put that into these scenes, these visual scenes where there's geometry, complex geometry in some cases. There's really precise rhythm and movements of focal objects. There's the backgrounds move. activating all those areas of the brain that flashing lights just don't, right? And so what we have is a much stronger cortical evoked response. And that means it doesn't take us an hour to be able to move the brain from one range of functioning to another. We can do it in 7 minutes or less. So, well, people that know about brainwave entrainment and stuff, I mean, most of the great products that are audio only, they're 40 to an hour long, right? And they need to be, because that's how long it takes, right? But when we really masterfully include all these things, we can get a lot done in about 7 minutes or less. And so that's the basis of how my technology is very different. Now, I also did some of the same type of things with the audio. One of the things that people have said, they'll get my mobile app and they'll play an audio and they'll go, wow, that sounds really bad. And they'll go like, let me guess, you didn't put headphones on, right? And not all of them are like this, but what I do, what I noticed, and what I discovered going to the same lecture as well, and this woman changed my life, she, in terms of the aha moments, right? Yeah. Our auditory system, right, does something called like a form of triangulation. Okay, that's and I don't know, it's complicated math. Like if you're trying to triangulate stuff, it's it's not my favorite thing to do. I know some people love it, but not me. It's complicated. But our auditory system is set up in such a way that it does it automatically, right? So based on where a person is, like it will triangulate the sound, distance, speed, location of various things in your environment, and it can pinpoint it instantly. So like, if my cat were to come to my door there and start scratching on it, my head would turn immediately to the source of the sound, right? That's because of that triangulation that happens. When something surprising or interesting happens in the environment, we turn right to it. Yeah. And that's our brain doing all kinds of complex math automatically, very quickly. Well, guess what happens when that happens? When our brain is doing this complex triangulation math, it's bouncing signals between the left and the right hemispheres of the brain very quickly. So, and what does that do? Well, so we know, and this is where it's really important to trauma, when people are experiencing stress and trauma, all the electric activity in the brain gets balled up on one side. We know this. We've taken MRIs with people, and it basically just spins like a top. So it'll be all trapped and the blood flow too. The blood flow, the brain electricity gets trapped on one side of the brain and basically just spins like a top, right? And that's why people feel stuck. That's why people, that obsessional thinking, they can't seem to get themselves out of the rut. Well, if you listen to really spatially rich 3D environment audio that invokes that triangulation effect in the brain, like forces the brain to do it, the brain will be forced to start to bounce signals between the left and the right hemispheres of the brain, and all that stress energy will begin to unwind, and the electrical activity and the blood flow will start to even out in the brain, right? And so these two innovations, that's why if you don't listen to it with headphones, it'll sound like really weird, but you put the headphones on and it's like, oh, I get it. There's a little bird, it's there, it's in front of me, it's behind me, and then it goes back the other way. And then, all this other stuff. We're stretching the brain and we're encouraging it to bounce signals back and forth. And then we're activating the visual system because there's that video component, and we can get a lot done real quick. Instead of spending 20 minutes to an hour, you can spend 5 to 7 minutes. And, you can start to rewire the brain and balance the electrical activity. And if your timing is right, you do some, just to strengthen the ability, but you do some on demand when the brain activity is not where you want it to be. Then you've got a beautiful set of tools to really be able to restructure, your life, right? And your emotional health and wellness.
That's fantastic. And I love that you've created it in such a way that, okay, we all need to take time, as you were saying, and spend time with ourselves. But I love that you have gotten it into a mobile platform that also allows us to bring it with us and to, do it in, the times when we're away from being with our personal selves, for ways, you've given us a way to really create massive change in such a small space of time. And that's fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, the mobile app just came this year, and these things are expensive, but I'll tell you, it was one of the things I wanted for myself. I use my own technology all the time. So does my wife, right? And so even when we're in their house, or, because a lot of us have been, not going too many places, right? It's just so easy to say, I'm going to give myself a 5-minute brain massage, right? And I just pick up my thing, throw in the, and away we go. And it's right there. It's something I've wanted for myself. When I did and the idea for the mobile app came when I was doing my TEDx presentation at the University of Windsor. The night before, I was just on Channel 7 News or something, and I put EEGs on the weatherman, right? And we just looked at his brain and everything, and it was a lot of fun, actually, right? But I was tired, and then we're doing this thing, and I'm in the audience, and I had put a passive brain fitness video on my phone, and I plugged into it and watched it before I got on stage, and it really helped to just, because I was a little bit nervous, right? And nervous is great. Yeah. Nervous energy is just fine. But the combination of tiredness and everything, I could just feel my brain, it was that dumb at 2 feeling again, right? Yeah. Except for it was like 7 at night. And so, I did a 10-minute session that particular time, and it felt great and it made all the difference in the world. And it was then, and this was quite some time ago, I went, I got to figure out a way, right, to get this on a mobile app. And I love to use it on my computers, and sometimes put them on USB sticks and put them on my big screen TV. I mean, that will really change the way you feel about life, but, with this big visual stuff. But it's more important, right, to have it easily accessible so you can use it when it matters the most.
Yes, absolutely. And that's one of, I feel, the greatest markers, the greatest, certifications that you can give a product that you've created, is that you use it yourself so frequently.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's, I got to tell you, going back and thinking when I got really interested in this, there was a study that I read about brainwave entrainment that said this doctor was able to raise the IQ of children that were 2 standard deviations below the mean, so 70 IQ-ish, right, by 17 points inside a year.
Wow.
Using brainwave entrainment. And of course, knowing my history and where I came from, what do you think happened when I read that? Right, I lit right up. That's how I got interested in it.
Yes.
In the first place. And so the beginnings of my work with this technology really came because it really, even though some of it sounded like science fiction and some of it actually was science fiction, but the potential of it really touched me deeply. And so the initial part of me getting involved with this technology was really about me. It was about helping myself and pushing, even though I was better, I thought I could do more. But then it very quickly turned, I was still working in the gaming industry. I was making CDs and handing them out to people. Somebody would tell me I have trouble sleeping. I go, yeah, here. I started off with audio only. It wasn't till down the road that I made all these discoveries about, the visual and all that stuff. And once I started handing them to other people and I saw how other people were being affected in such a positive way, I was hooked. I was hooked. That became my life after that.
Wonderful. Well, we are running low on time, and I want to remind everyone that there are 2 buttons below this video that take you to a free gift and a special offer that Jeffrey has for you. Can you share a bit about these? And for your special offer, can you talk about how it's focused on trauma recovery?
Sure. Well, the free gift is really about the app, the mobile app. So you can get the mobile app, get that on your Apple or Android phone. It's not a Windows-based app, although we are going to have a version that will be Windows, like computer-based Mac or Windows later, probably later this year even. But for now, it's only mobile device. And through that link, what will happen is that the system, when you put your email in and all that stuff, it'll say, give them some free stuff on the mobile app, right? So you get a couple free things, like a couple audios mainly, not a lot of visual-based stuff, but you'll get an idea of some of the audios and some of the things that we've done, just to give you a little taste, right? And you can use it as much as you want, and so on and so forth. Sleep Assist is on there, which people has rave reviews. Some of the brain boost and stress relief audios, to put those on, the stress relief ones, and just close your eyes and listen. That will help unwind, that stress energy in the brain. If you've got a ball going, right, it'll help do that. The special offer is a program that I call SM7. The mobile app, by the way, is called Smarter in 7 Minutes, right? And so this program is Smarter in 7 Minutes. I abbreviate it to SM7, which is actually brings in another type of technology, scalar imprinting, 0-point energy imprinting, where the process is crazy. It really is. But essentially, it's a whole package. Well, there's 7 packages, the special offer. And there's like the rescue package, the trauma recovery package, the nighty-night package, the vibrant health package, the mega brain package, the meditation package, the mindfulness package. 7 complete packages, all with between 4 and 5 video and audio releases that are designed to help your brain in very specific ways. And with that, we bring in this sort of 0-point scalar imprinting that we used in the audio and the visuals as well. And look, it's not as weird as it sounds. You know, scalar is a 0-point. It's a quantum informational field, and that's created using, well, in my case, some very, very powerful electromagnetic field generators. When I turn them on, I take out my whole alarm system in the house. It shuts it all down. Pardon me. But by passing audio through it, and by doing this fancy little visual thing with it, we can imprint a quantum informational field inside the video and the audio itself. And I've chosen different frequencies that will help along with this. And so world-class brainwave entrainment plus this new sort of, and quantum informational field, I mean, it's really simple. Your energetic anatomy will pick it up like a record. And so, for example, the trauma recovery package, I teach this really simple and beautiful tapping sequence to do while watching the video. I call it the hug your heart sequence, right? It's really simple, and it's sort of just, it just really helps to release. Well, during that whole part of that video creation, we were pumping in quantum informational field that resonates the brain to calm and relax. So not only do you have the frequency-based stuff, the Bfftjg effect, we also have this other quantum informational field that comes in that helps resonate people with the calm and relax field. And so this is the first time I've ever done that. January 19th was the first time I released this product, and our team was absolutely blown away. I've hired a new person just because everything exploded, like in terms of just people, like the testimonials and people coming in. We have people post in our private Facebook group that the trauma just, you know, washed right out of her, like somebody just unplugged, you know, from the feet, and it just flowed right out. And, you know, of course, that's not going to happen that beautifully and perfectly for everybody.
Right.
There's always, you know, there's always different layers to all this stuff. But for people that are really working with trauma, the rescue package, which is the I need help peeling myself off the wall package. Like, I got super triggered, and you know, and then the trauma recovery package is more about that private time where you're going to work on relationship trauma, because we have a release called relationship trauma. We have, you know, just general trauma, past trauma, you know, social trauma, all these different things that you can work with when you don't need to be peeled off the wall, right? But the rescue package is there for you if there's that sort of situation that happens in that trigger. And of course, every other release that we have there that focuses on meditation or mindfulness, or, you know, the mega brain package, which is creativity and productivity. When somebody is triggered, I mean, you can choose to use that to move your brain into a different state. And depending on what you're doing, if it's in the middle of the day, you might want to use the mega brain package, even though there's a trauma. Like, I mean, let's say in the middle of the day, you get triggered by something, but you got to get to a real productive place. Well, what's important here is that we move your brain out of that, you know, that state. And so, but we are also at work, right? So let's use something from the mega brain package to do it, right? And that's why we've bundled all 7 of these packages together for this offer.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for offering these wonderfully sophisticated resources to our community. Do you have any last thoughts? One bonus insight that you can leave our Avaya community with today?
Well, you know, love yourself. Don't watch the news. You know, these are sounds really crazy, but I've been surveying a lot of people lately, and some people mistakenly think they can turn on the news and binge watch for 34 hours, and then they wonder why they feel like crap, right? Think about how you want to feel, and put in your body those things that resonate with that. And that's my final thought. I mean, the approach to treating anxiety and depression and all this stuff really doesn't have to be complicated. A lot of people complicate it, and it really doesn't. It's just about really training your brain to work the way you want it to work. And as long as you make a plan, put yourself on a calendar, that step, I'll tell you, is so very important and so powerful. And people that follow me on this, they put themselves on the calendar and they do it just twice a day for a month. At the end of that month, if they're journaling, they come back to me every time and go, Jeff, amazing what has happened. And so I say, just take the time to love yourself, make yourself important enough, put yourself on the calendar, whether you're using my technology or meditation or anything else, some kind of self-care, self-love, and you will go very far.
Avaya has changed my life.
Avaya has made me the woman I am today.
Avaya is my home.
Avaya is personal freedom.
Avaya is the reason my life continuously improves.
Let everyone in your life know about Avaya.
Everyone needs to know about this amazing company.
Thank you, Avaya, for appearing in my inbox.
What Ike Allen and Andy Anderson have created at Avaya is what the world needs.